The Nevada desert at night was not a place of peace. It was a place of overwhelming, suffocating emptiness. The darkness here was absolute, swallowing the starlight before it could reach the valley floor. Highway 93 stretched out like a black ribbon of asphalt, cutting through miles of sagebrush and jagged rock formations that looked like sleeping giants in the gloom. The temperature had dropped significantly since sunset, turning the dry air into a biting chill that seeped through clothing and rattled bones. For anyone stranded out here, the silence was the loudest thing in the world, broken only by the occasional howl of a coyote or the wind whistling through the scrub. Then the silence was shattered. It started as a low vibration in the ground, a tremor that could be felt in the soles of boots before it could be heard. Miles away, a single headlight appeared over the crest of a hill, followed by another, and then another until the horizon was ablaze with a river of white light. The sound hit next, a thunderous, synchronized roar of 50 V-twin engines firing in unison. This was the Iron Syndicate MC, a club known throughout the West Coast not for criminal enterprise, but for their sheer discipline and the high profile of their membership. At the front of the formation rode Jackson Iron Sterling. By day, Jackson was the CEO of a logistics empire in Seattle, a man who moved millions of dollars with a signature. By night, and especially on these long runs, he was simply Prez. He rode a custom-built bagger, blacked out and menacing, costing more than most luxury cars. His face was hidden behind a tinted visor, but his posture was rigid and commanding. He controlled the pack with hand signals, a general leading his cavalry through the treacherous night. The convoy was moving at a steady 80 miles per hour, eating up the distance to Las Vegas. The sensation of speed was hypnotic. The wind hammered against Jackson's chest, a physical reminder of his freedom from the boardroom. The smell of exhaust and high-octane fuel was perfume to him. For Jackson, these rides were a necessity, a way to purge the stress of corporate warfare and reconnect with something primal and real. The road didn't care about his stock portfolio. It only respected skill and focus. As they crested a long rise, Jackson's sharp eyes scanned the road ahead. His peripheral vision was excellent, honed by years of riding. He saw the reflective markers flashing by, the yellow center line and the endless dark. But then something broke the pattern. About a half-mile ahead, on the narrow shoulder of the southbound lane, there was a shape. It was dark, unlit, and barely distinguishable from the shadows of the desert. Most people would have missed it. At this speed, it was just a blur. But Jackson saw the faint, dull reflection of a bumper. It was a car, completely dark, sitting dangerously close to the white line. No hazard lights were flashing. No flares were burning. It was a dead vehicle in a dead zone. An instinctual alarm bell rang in Jackson's mind. A car stopped like that without lights was a coffin waiting to happen. He didn't hesitate. Jackson raised his left fist into the air, holding it steady for a second to ensure his road captains saw the signal. Then he opened his hand and made a pushing motion toward the shoulder. The signal was immediate and absolute. Emergency stop. Behind him, brake lights flared red like a wave crashing against a shore. The thunderous roar of the engines changed pitch as 50 riders downshifted simultaneously. The convoy began to slow down, the discipline impeccable. No one swerved, no one panicked. They moved as a single organism. Jackson guided his bike toward the shoulder, his headlight sweeping across the breakdown lane. As he got closer, the shape resolved into an old, battered sedan, listing slightly to one side. It looked abandoned, a piece of junk left to rot in the heat. But as Jackson brought his heavy machine to a halt, the gravel crunching under his tires, his headlight beam cut through the rear window of the sedan. There was movement inside. A small hand pressed against the glass. A face, pale and terrified, peered out. It wasn't abandoned. Someone was trapped inside, sitting in the dark, miles from civilization. Jackson killed his engine. The sudden silence was jarring, ringing in his ears. Behind him, 49 other engines cut out in rapid succession, leaving only the ticking of cooling metal and the wind. Jackson kicked down his stand and swung his leg over the bike. He was a large man, broad-shouldered in his leather cut, his boots heavy on the asphalt. He adjusted his gloves and began walking toward the car. He knew what he looked like. He knew that 50 bikers descending on a lone car in the middle of the night was the stuff of horror movies. He could see the person inside the car scrambling, locking the doors, terrified. He stopped 10 feet away, keeping his hands visible. He wasn't there to intimidate. He was there to assess. The rest of the club waited. They didn't dismount yet. They sat on their bikes, silent sentinels in the dark, waiting for the word from their president. The scene was surreal, a wall of leather and chrome facing down a rusted sedan. Jackson took a breath of the cold desert air. He could smell the fear coming from the car. "Easy now," he muttered to himself. He took off his helmet, revealing a face that was rugged but clean-shaven, with graying temples that hinted at his age and experience. He didn't look like a thug. He looked like a man who solved problems. He stepped closer to the driver's side window. He tapped gently on the glass with a knuckle. Inside, a young woman was curled up in the driver's seat, clutching a phone that was clearly dead. Her eyes were wide, filled with tears. She was shaking so hard the car seemed to vibrate. She looked no older than 20. Jackson's heart tightened. She reminded him of his own daughter. "Miss," Jackson called out, his voice deep but soft, trying to cut through the panic. "My name is Jackson. We aren't going to hurt you. You're safe." The girl didn't roll down the window. She just stared at him, paralyzed. Jackson knew he had to bridge the gap between her terror and his intention, and he had to do it fast before the cold or the fear did any more damage. Eleanor thought she was going to die. It wasn't a dramatic thought, just a cold, hard certainty that had settled in her chest over the last 2 hours. Her 2005 sedan had sputtered and died miles ago, the engine seizing with a horrific grinding noise. She had coasted to the shoulder, watching the dashboard lights flicker and die. Then the darkness took over. Her phone had 4% battery when she stopped. It had died 10 minutes later while she was trying to get a signal that didn't exist. She was cold. The heater had died with the engine. She was wearing only a thin denim jacket over her waitress uniform. She had locked the doors, curled her legs up to her chest and prayed. Every shadow looked like a monster. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps. She was alone in a void, invisible to the world. Then the sound had started. At first she thought it was a semi-truck, which might have been a savior, but the sound grew into a roar that shook the frame of her car. She looked in the rearview mirror and saw the wall of lights. It looked like an invasion. When the bikes slowed down and surrounded her, panic spiked in her veins like ice water. She saw the silhouettes of the men, huge, bulky, faceless in their helmets. She had seen movies. She knew what happened to girls who broke down on lonely highways when motorcycle gangs showed up. She locked the doors again, checking the handle 3 times. When the lead biker walked toward her, she stopped breathing. He was massive. The leather vest, the heavy boots, the way he walked with total confidence, it all screamed danger. She watched him take off his helmet. That surprised her. He didn't look like a monster. He looked tired. He looked human. But the fear was too deep to let go. When he tapped on the glass, she flinched so hard she hit her head on the steering wheel. He spoke, but she couldn't hear the words through the glass and the rushing of blood in her ears. "Miss?" He said it again, louder this time. "I need you to lower the window just an inch. I'm not going to touch the door. Just an inch." Elena looked at his hands. They were empty. He stepped back, giving her space. He wasn't crowding the door. He was waiting. Eleanor's hand trembled as she reached for the manual crank. She rolled it down a crack, just enough for sound to travel. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't have any money. Please, just go away." Jackson heard the whisper. It broke him a little. "I don't want your money, sweetheart," he said gently. "I'm worried about you freezing to death out here. Your car is dead. It's 30 degrees. You can't stay in there." "I'm waiting for a tow truck," she lied. She needed a defense. Jackson smiled sadly. "No, you aren't. There's no cell service for 50 miles in either direction, and your battery is dead. I can see the screen from here." He gestured behind him to the silent army of bikes. "We have a satellite phone. We have tools. And we have food. You're in a bad spot and we can help you out of it. But you have to trust me." Eleanor looked past him at the other bikers. Some had taken their helmets off. They were smoking cigarettes, stretching their legs. They weren't looking at her like prey. They were looking at the car like a mechanical problem. One of them, a younger guy, was rummaging through a saddlebag and pulled out a thermos. "I'm the president of this club," Jackson said, drawing her attention back. "My name is Jackson Sterling. If anyone touches you, they answer to me. And I don't let people get hurt. Not on my watch." There was something in his voice, an authority that didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a promise. Eleanor looked at the cold desert beyond the headlights. She looked at her dead phone. She realized she had no choice. Staying in the car meant freezing. Opening the door meant trusting a stranger. She slowly unlocked the door. The click was loud in the silence. Jackson didn't move toward her. He waited for her to push the door open. When she stepped out, the cold wind hit her instantly, making her teeth chatter. Her legs were stiff and weak. "There you go," Jackson said. He unzipped his heavy leather jacket. Underneath, he wore a thick thermal hoodie. He stripped the jacket off. "Put this on. It's going to be heavy, but it's warm." Elena hesitated, then took the jacket. It was immense. It smelled of leather, expensive cologne, and gasoline. She slipped her arms into it, and the warmth was instant, enveloping her. It hung down to her knees. "Thank you," she stammered. "Don't thank me yet," Jackson said, turning to his crew. His voice changed, becoming booming and authoritative. "All right, listen up. We got a civilian down. Rico, bring the tool roll. Tiny, get the spotlight. Doc, bring some water and that protein bar stash you keep hiding. Let's see what we're dealing with." The group of terrifying bikers instantly snapped into action. It wasn't a gang descending on a victim. It was a pit crew swarming a race car. Eleanor stood by the guardrail, wrapped in the giant jacket, watching in bewilderment as the devils turned into mechanics. The transformation of the scene was remarkable. Within minutes, the dark stretch of highway was illuminated by high-powered LED flashlights and the headlights of 3 motorcycles positioned to light up the engine bay of Elena's car. The ominous atmosphere vanished, replaced by a focused, professional hum of activity. Jackson stood next to Eleanor, acting as a shield between her and the wind, and also between her and the rest of the men. He knew that even if his guys were good, 50 men were overwhelming for one girl. He kept a respectful distance but remained close enough to speak. "What's your name?" he asked, watching Rico, the club's lead mechanic, pop the hood of the sedan. "Elena," she said, pulling the collar of the jacket tighter. I'm a student. I was trying to get to Vegas for a shift. My tuition is due next week." "Working the late shift?" Jackson asked. "Double shift," Elena corrected. "My car started making a noise about an hour ago, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't afford a tow." Jackson nodded. He knew that desperation. Before he was a millionaire, before the logistics company, he had been a kid from the wrong side of the tracks, with nothing but a wrench and a bad attitude. He remembered counting pennies for gas. "Well, Elena, you've got the best mechanic in the state looking at your engine right now. Rico builds bikes from scratch. If it can be fixed, he'll fix it." Rico, a wiry man with grease-stained hands and tattoos up to his neck, leaned out from under the hood. "Hey, Prez, it's the alternator belt, snapped clean off, and the battery is drained dead because of it. Can we fix it?" Jackson asked. "I don't carry spare belts for a 2005 sedan in my saddlebags, boss," Rico grunted, wiping his hands on a rag. "And without a belt, the water pump won't run. She'll overheat in a mile." Eleanor's face fell. "Oh no, I can't leave it here. It'll get towed. I'll lose my job." Panic was rising again. The car was her lifeline. Jackson held up a hand. "Relax. We aren't leaving it." He turned to another rider, a burly man named Stitch, who drove the club's support truck, a Ford F-350 that trailed the pack with spare parts and a trailer. "Stitch, check the box. Do we have any serpentine belts? Anything close?" Stitch rumbled over. "We got belts for the Harleys, might be too short, but wait." He jogged back to the truck. While they waited, another biker, the one named Doc, approached Elena. He looked scary, bald head, beard down to his chest, but he held out a bottle of water and a wrapped sandwich. "It's ham and cheese," he rumbled. "My old lady packed it. Eat. You're shaking." Eleanor took the food. She hadn't eaten since lunch. "Thank you," she whispered. She took a bite, and the normalcy of the sandwich made her want to cry. These men were feeding her. "Why are you doing this?" Eleanor asked Jackson, looking up at him. "You don't know me. You stopped 50 people for one broke girl." Jackson looked at the road, his expression serious. "It's the code, Elena. On the road you help. It doesn't matter who it is. 2 wheels or 4, rich or poor. When you're out here, the desert tries to kill you. We don't help the desert, we help the traveler. Besides," he looked at her kindly, "no one gets left behind. That's the motto of the Vanguard. But you're a biker gang," she said, the term slipping out before she could stop it. Jackson chuckled. "Motorcycle club. And yeah, we are. We're loud, we're ugly, and we don't follow many rules. But the rules we do follow, we take them seriously. Protecting women and children is at the top of the list. Stitch came running back, holding a black rubber belt. It ain't perfect, Prez. It's a spare belt for the trailer generator, but the width looks about right. If we bypass the AC compressor, I think I can wrestle it onto the alternator and the crank. Do it, Jackson ordered. Get it running. It's going to be a temporary fix, Rico warned. It won't last forever. It just needs to last to the next town, Jackson said. Get to work. Elena watched them. They were arguing about tension pulleys and leverage, passing tools, cursing at the stubborn bolts. They were working so hard for her. She felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the jacket. For the first time that night, she felt safe. The repair was not easy. The desert wind was picking up, blowing dust into the engine bay and into the eyes of the men working. Rico and Stitch were shoulder to shoulder under the hood, their flashlights held in their teeth. The generator belt was slightly too small, requiring brute force to stretch it over the pulleys. "Come on, you piece of junk," Rico grunted, his knuckles scraping against the metal block. "Give me half an inch." Jackson stepped in. "Need muscle?" "Yeah, Prez, push down on the tensioner arm with the breaker bar. I need both hands to slip the belt on," Rico said. Jackson didn't hesitate. He handed his sunglasses to Elena, a strange, intimate gesture of trust, and rolled up the sleeves of his thermal shirt. He leaned into the engine bay, grabbing the long metal bar. Even in the dim light, Elena could see the muscles in his arms strain as he applied hundreds of pounds of pressure to the spring-loaded tensioner. "Now!" Jackson shouted. Rico cursed, shoved his fingers into the dangerous gap, and snapped the belt into the grooves. "Got it! Release!" Jackson eased the tension off. They stepped back, breathing hard. Jackson's hands were covered in black grease. He wiped them on a rag, completely unbothered by the dirt on his expensive clothes. "Let's jump the battery," Jackson ordered. A set of cables was run from one of the bikes to the car battery. The bike revved, sending power into the dead sedan. "Try it, Eleanor," Jackson said, opening the driver's door for her. Eleanor slipped into the seat. She turned the key. The engine cranked sluggishly, then caught. It roared to life, settling into a somewhat noisy idle. The belt squealed a little, but it held. "Yes," Eleanor cheered, clapping her hands. The bikers around the car actually cheered with her, a few of them fist-bumping. It was a victory. "Don't turn it off," Rico warned. "Alternator is charging now, but that battery is toast. If you kill the engine, it won't start again." Jackson leaned into the window. "You hear that? Keep it running." He looked at the dashboard. "You have gas?" "Half a tank," Elena said. "Good. Now, we aren't just going to wave goodbye," Jackson said. "That belt is a jury-rigged job. If it snaps again in 5 miles, you're back to square one. We're heading to Vegas. You're going to drive in the middle of the pack." Elena's eyes widened. "In the middle? Safest place on Earth," Jackson grinned. "We'll form a box around you. We control the speed, you just steer. We'll escort you to a service station in Alamo. It's about 40 miles up the road. They have a 24-hour mechanic." Just then, a pair of headlights appeared down the highway. A sheriff's cruiser slowed down as it approached the massive gathering of bikes. The lights on the light bar flashed once. A warning. The deputy inside slowed to a crawl, looking suspicious. 50 bikers on the side of the road usually meant trouble. Eleanor froze. If the cop stopped, he might tow the car because of the unsafe repair, or he might harass the bikers. Jackson walked calmly to the edge of the road. He didn't posture aggressively. He simply gave a respectful wave to the deputy. The deputy, seeing the car running and the lack of violence, and perhaps recognizing the Iron Syndicate patch, and knowing better than to start a paperwork nightmare at 2 a.m., simply nodded and sped back up, driving away. "See?" Jackson told Elena. "We're the good guys tonight." Elena laughed, a sound of pure relief. "I believe you." "Okay, let's mount up," Jackson shouted. "Formation Delta, put the car in the pocket. Let's move." The men scrambled back to their bikes. The roar of 50 engines starting up at once was deafening, but this time to Elena, it sounded like a choir of angels. She put the car in drive. Jackson waited until she was moving, then pulled out alongside her. He pointed forward. The convoy enveloped her. She was surrounded by red taillights in front and blinding headlights behind. She was the heart of the beast now. Driving in the center of a motorcycle convoy was an experience Elena would never forget. The world outside her windows was a blur of noise and motion, but inside the pocket, she felt a strange calm. The bikers adjusted their speed to hers, keeping a steady 60 miles per hour to protect her fragile engine belt. They blocked the wind for her. They illuminated the road with 100 beams of light. She felt like a queen being escorted by a royal guard. Jackson rode directly to her left, his massive bike keeping pace with her window. Every now and then he would glance over and give her a thumbs up. Elena kept her eyes on the road, gripping the wheel, tears streaming down her face. She was crying from exhaustion, yes, but also from gratitude. She had felt so invisible, so worthless just hours ago. Now an army was moving the world to make sure she got home. After 45 minutes, the lights of Alamo appeared on the horizon. It was a small dust-stop town, but it had a large truck stop with a 24-hour garage. Jackson signaled the exit. The entire convoy swept off the highway, taking over the off-ramp. They pulled into the brightly lit gas station. The attendant inside the store probably had a heart attack, seeing 50 bikers roll in at 3 a.m. They parked in orderly rows. Eleanor pulled her car up to the garage bay. Jackson was off his bike before she even stopped. He walked into the garage office. Through the glass, Eleanor saw him talking to the night mechanic, a greasy, tired-looking man. The mechanic shook his head, looking like he wanted to say no. Jackson reached into his pocket. He didn't pull out a gun. He pulled out a wallet. He produced a card, a black card, the kind made of metal. He also laid a stack of cash on the counter. The mechanic's attitude changed instantly. He nodded vigorously, grabbing his keys. Jackson walked back out to Elena. "Okay, here's the deal. The mechanic is going to replace the belt with the proper one, put in a new battery and check your oil. He's doing it right now." "Jackson, I can't pay for that," Elena said, stepping out of the car. She tried to give him back his leather jacket. "I literally have $12 in my bank account." Jackson pushed the jacket back toward her. "Keep it on for a minute. And don't worry about the bill. The logistics company pays for road hazards. It's a tax write-off." He lied smoothly. He winked. You're rich, aren't you?" Elena asked. She had noticed the watch on his wrist when he was working on the engine. It was a Rolex, scratched and dirty, but unmistakable. Jackson looked at his boots. "I've been lucky. I built a business. But money just buys things, Elena. It doesn't buy loyalty, and it doesn't buy a family like this." He gestured to the bikers who were currently buying coffee and snacks, laughing and joking. "This is what matters. Tonight, helping you, that was worth more than my last merger. I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You don't have to. But I am curious." Jackson leaned against the car. "What are you studying? You said you're a student." "Nursing," Elena said. "I want to be an ER nurse. I want to help people when they're having their worst days." Jackson smiled, a genuine beaming smile. "See? We aren't so different. You fix people. I fix supply chains. Tonight, we just fixed a car. You stick with it, Elena. The world needs more people who want to help." The mechanic came out with a new battery. "All right, pull it in, miss." Jackson patted the roof of her car. "Go get it fixed. We'll wait until you're done." "You don't have to wait," she said. "We started this," Jackson said firmly. "We finish it. No one gets left behind." While the car was being worked on, the bikers sat on the curbs drinking coffee. Elena sat with them. They asked her about school, told her jokes about their bikes, showed her pictures of their kids. The fear was completely gone. She realized that the devil in leather was just a costume. Underneath, they were fathers, brothers, and sons. An hour later, the car was ready. The engine purred perfectly with a new belt and a strong battery. The mechanic had even filled the gas tank on Jackson's orders. Eleanor felt like she was driving a new car. She walked out to where Jackson was standing by his bike. The eastern sky was just starting to turn a deep, bruised purple. Dawn was coming. The magic of the night was ending. "She's all set," Jackson said. "You've got a full tank and a solid engine. You'll make Vegas in 2 hours easy." Elena took off the heavy leather jacket. She felt cold immediately without it, but she handed it back to him. "I wish I could keep this just to remember tonight," she joked weakly. Jackson took the jacket, but then he reached into the inner pocket. He pulled out a small business card. He clicked a pen and wrote something on the back of it. He handed it to her. "Put this in your wallet," he said. Elena looked at the card. It was thick, expensive stock. On the front it read, "Jackson Sterling, CEO, Sterling Global Logistics." On the back, in messy handwriting, he had written, "No one gets left behind. Call this number if you ever need a tow, a job, or a friend." Below it was his personal cell number, "And here," Jackson said. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small, heavy object wrapped in a cloth. "It's a guardian bell. Bikers put them on their bikes to ward off road gremlins. Bad luck." He handed it to her. It was a tiny pewter bell. "Hang it on your rearview mirror." Elena clutched the bell. Tears spilled over again. "Thank you, Jackson." "Thank you, everyone." She looked at the group of 50 men. "Thank you," she shouted. A roar of "You're welcome" and "Ride safe, kid" came back from the group. "We're peeling off here to grab breakfast at the diner across the street," Jackson said. "You need to get to Vegas for that shift. Go on, you'll make it." Elena nodded. She got into her car. She started the engine. It sounded strong. She hung the tiny bell on her mirror. It chimed softly. She put the car in gear and pulled out of the station. As she turned onto the highway, she looked in her rearview mirror. Jackson was standing by his bike, watching her. He raised his fist in the air. A salute. She tapped her horn twice. She drove into the sunrise. The desert no longer looking scary, but beautiful. The road was the same, but she was different. She had seen the best of humanity in the darkest of places. Back at the station, Jackson watched her taillights fade. "All right, boys," he yelled. "Breakfast is on me, then we ride." The club cheered. They were tired, cold, and hungry. But the mood was electric. They had saved a life tonight. That felt better than any party or any fight. Jackson put his jacket back on. It still smelled like the cheap perfume Elena wore. He smiled. By the time Elena made it to her shift in Las Vegas, she was exhausted, grease-stained, and 10 minutes late. Her manager, a stern woman named Brenda, looked at her disheveled appearance. "You look like you've been dragged behind a truck, Elena. You okay?" Elena touched the tiny bell on her mirror as she grabbed her bag. "I'm fine, Brenda. Actually, I had the best luck of my life last night." She worked her double shift with an energy she didn't know she had. When she told the story to her co-workers, they didn't believe her at first. "A millionaire biker?" "Yeah, right." But then she showed them the business card. One of the nurses Googled the name. "Holy cow," the nurse said, turning her phone around. "Jackson Sterling. Net worth, well, a lot. He was in Forbes last month." The story didn't stay in the hospital break room. Elena posted a picture of the card and the bell on her social media, writing a long post about the night. She didn't tag Jackson, but the story went viral locally. People recognized the description of the Iron Syndicate. The comments flooded in. Usually people complained about the noise of motorcycles, but this time the comments were different. "They fixed my flat tire last year." "Sterling donated to the Children's Hospital anonymously." Scary dudes, but hearts of gold. On Monday morning, Jackson walked into his glass-walled office in Seattle. He was wearing a 3-piece tailored suit. The grease was scrubbed from his hands. His hair was combed. He looked every inch the corporate titan. His secretary walked in. "Mr. Sterling, you have a meeting with the board in 10 minutes, and there's a weird package for you." "Oh?" Jackson looked up from his computer. She handed him a small box. It had no return address, just a postmark from Las Vegas. Jackson opened it. Inside was a brand new, high-quality serpentine belt for a 2005 sedan, and a note. "I bought a spare. Just in case you find another damsel in distress. Thank you for saving my life. Elena." Jackson laughed, a loud, booming laugh that startled the people in the hallway. He placed the belt on his desk, right next to his Executive of the Year award. He walked into the boardroom. The other executives were discussing profit margins and quarterly projections. They looked at Jackson, expecting him to talk about efficiency. "Before we start," Jackson said, leaning on the table, "I want to talk about our roadside assistance policy. It needs to be better. We have trucks everywhere. If they see someone stranded, they stop. No matter the schedule. No one gets left behind." The board members looked confused. "But sir, the cost—" "I don't care about the cost," Jackson said, his eyes flashing with the fire of the road. "It's the code. Now, let's get to work." Far away on Highway 93, the wind blew across the empty asphalt. The darkness would come again tonight. But somewhere a young nurse was driving a car that ran perfectly, and a CEO was running a company with a heart, both connected by a single black rubber belt and a promise kept in the dark.